Society Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Ken Schachter, and on today's episode of Disrupting Hate on hmTv, we'll be joined by special guest Scott Richman, the Anti-Defamation League's regional director for New York and New Jersey. We'll be discussing events in the Middle East, some controversy involving the ADL, and the finding of the ADL's research. In connection with the ADL's role in tracking hate crimes, has the organization seen any change in the last few weeks since the Trump administration unveiled its 20-point peace proposal at the end of September, followed by a ceasefire in Gaza? Scott.
Well, I mean, that would be purely anecdotal because we don't have data yet, comprehensive data on that. I can only tell you from the perspective of New York, New Jersey, we literally get anti-Semitic incidents into our office every day, and we continue to have that. I can't say whether it's exactly the same volume, but certainly we have seen a doubling down, groups saying, the fight is not over. We've certainly seen that around the region. And continue to receive these incidents. I think it's really too soon to tell.
The ADL itself was the target of scrutiny for including Turning Point USA, the organization founded by assassinated activist Charlie Kirk, in its glossary of extremism. After an outcry on the right, the ADL scrapped the glossary. Can you just take us behind that decision a bit?
So that had been in the works for a very long time. It wasn't actually related to Turning Point. The issue is that ADL has sort of two ways of getting that information out there. We had our hate glossary, which listed organizations that were of concern to us with a very brief explanation. I think it was up to 25 words, so really very brief. But we also put out extensive backgrounders on organizations of particular concern to us. And we realized that in this age, when there is that level of scrutiny and terrible polarization, that these 25 characters were really insufficient. When it comes to these organizations, there's too much information, too much nuance to be able to convey in 25 characters, and we decided to simply rely on our long-form backgrounders and scrap the hate glossary because it was getting confused by people.
Also in the headlines, of course, we've had the election of Zohran Mamdani in New York City as mayor. Do you expect or have you seen any evidence that the election of Mamdani, famously known for his anti-Israel rhetoric, embolden any people who might be predisposed toward hate crimes or other actions?
Again, I think it's too soon to tell. I mean, it's only been a few days, and certainly he's not mayor yet. He'll be mayor when he's inaugurated. There's no way to link any of the anti-Semitic incidents that we've seen over the past few days with Mamdani, unless somebody did something explicitly to connect to Mamdani, and I haven't really seen that.
In another headline-grabbing incident, prominent right-wing podcaster Tucker Carlson conducted a friendly interview with Nick Fuentes, described as a neo-Nazi and virulent anti-Semite. And afterward, conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, defended Carlson. And after that, Texas Senator Ted Cruz berated fellow Republicans for failing to call out Carlson. The ADL has maintained it as nonpartisan, but how can the ADL maintain a balance and stay effective in such a highly polarized society?
It's what we've always done. We call balls and strikes, whether it's on the right or the left, doesn't matter to us. And when we see anti-Semitism or extremism, we call it out. It's difficult though. I just, that's the basic understanding. But I will say, very difficult for an organization like ADL to hold the center when you have increasing polarization, when you have both sides uh, sort of holding sway, when you have a base on both sides that will support you no matter what your actions. It's very hard to be in the center where you can be so viciously attacked by both sides, which we are. There are moments in the day when we are part of what is termed the radical left. And there are moments in the day when we are part of the extreme right. It depends on your vantage point. Obviously, we can't be both, but we are centrist. And for some, that appears to be way too far to the right, and for some, that appears to be way too far to the left. But it's a problem in our society because it's the center that will manage hate. You need a strong center to manage hate. If the extremes begin to hold sway, then extreme views begin to move towards the center.
Yeah, the center indeed can be a very uncomfortable place. The ADL's 2024 audit of anti-Semitic incidents found 9,354 across the U.S., the highest level since the ADL began keeping records. In looking at the numbers, I see there was an almost ninefold increase in the past decade, with a sharp rise after the October 7th attack in 2023 attack by Hamas in southern Israel. That attack, of course, killed more than 1,200 people, and 251 hostages were captured. Can you um, can you take us behind the numbers a bit and tell us what trends stand out to you?
Sure. So first of all, I think your audience should understand what the audit is. I mean, it's essentially the gold standard. I mean, the standard by which everybody takes the temperature in this country of anti-Semitism. And the reason that it's used so widely and relied upon is because it is not a survey. Generally, when it comes to societal trends, people tend to do surveys. And we do surveys too. I mean, we have our Center for Anti-Semitism Research, which puts out many surveys. And what would a survey on anti-Semitism look like? You might ask, are you experiencing anti-Semitism? Are you worried about it? Are you changing your behavior because of it? But that's not what this is. This is a look at the incidents to which ADL responded in the prior year. So I mentioned that ADL responds to anti-Semitic incidents. We track and respond to anti-Semitic incidents that are reported to us or that we see in the media. We've been doing this since 1979. So, a huge amount of data. And that's the work of my team, literally working with schools, K to 12 schools, with campuses, with law enforcement, with social media, on the street, in synagogues, wherever it happens to be, to track and respond to incidents. We had nearly 5,000 incidents reported to my office last year in 2024. And when I say my office, I'm talking about New York, New Jersey. There are another 24 offices of ADL across the country, all doing the same work, although there's no place across the country that has as many incidents as New York by a lot. Um, so that's the audit of anti-Semitic incidents. It's a look at what we did the year before, the incidents that we not only were reported to us, but then we were able to verify as anti-Semitism. So of those nearly 5,000, only 2,000 plus were verified as anti-Semitic incidents. Sometimes it's a duplicate, sometimes it's what people perceive to be anti-Semitism, and we let them know, that maybe that's just criticism of Israel. You may not like it, I may not like it, but it's not actually anti-Semitism. And sometimes it's other forms of hate which get reported to us and that we help because we are ADL and we have resources for 112 years of responding to anti-Semitism and hate, and we supply those willingly. So it boils down to a smaller number. Now, as I say, we've been doing this since 1979, and In 1979, the number of incidents was very low and very stable. And in 1980, and in 81 and 82, and I can tell you, I grew up in Long Island, very close to Glen Cove, where you are. And when I was growing up, I didn't think about anti-Semitism. It didn't occur to me. It was not a part of my world, and I just assumed my kids would grow up the same way, and they're not. It really was not until 2013 when we began to see a rise. Otherwise, those numbers were very low and very stable. But in 2013, we detected a rise in anti-Semitic incidents, and it began to go up and up and up. 2014, 15, 16, each year it continued to rise, and then it began to accelerate even faster. And by the time we got to 2019, it was a very difficult year, a year that ended with two terrible incidents in this region, a shooting at a kosher supermarket in Jersey City, and a stabbing at a Hanukkah party in Muncie. And people thought, this is as bad as it could get. And then we all retreated to our homes for COVID, and we saw a slight dip, but not enough of a dip. A lot of the anti-Semitism went to social media. But by 2021, it came roaring back. 2022, even higher. But I can tell you that if you add the numbers for 2020, 2021, and 2022, and you add them all together, you still will not reach the number of incidents we dealt with in 2023. So you correctly referenced that the post 10/7 reality resulted in literally an explosion of anti-Semitic incidents. And here we're only talking about the fourth quarter, post 10/7, till the end of the year. 2024 was even higher than that because it was a full year's worth of this new level of anti-Semitism. Generally, what we saw post 10/7 across the nation was a tripling of what was already the highest levels of anti-Semitism that we had been seeing. It was somewhere between 2 and 3,000 every year, a little more than 3,000 in 2022, and it jumped to over 9,000 in 2024, which is the latest audit. Another trend that I will cite is that for I've been the director of ADL New York, New Jersey for the past 5 years, and in most of those years, we were seeing anti-Zionism or anti-Israelism in terms of which incidents could be tied to that. And of course, there's nothing wrong with criticism of Israel, but there are moments when it rises to the level of anti-Semitism. And for that, we use the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. So when we saw incidents that were tied to Israel, we noted that because the audit is not just the numbers, it's an analysis. And as part of the analysis, we will say if it's anti-Israel related. So that number was always around 10, 12, as much as 15%, but never higher. Vast majority of incidents were not Israel related, or we couldn't tie it to Israel. That number is now 58% in the latest audit. So the vast majority of anti-Semitic incidents are now connected to Israel and can be verified. And I'll give you an example. What if you have a college campus and somebody pulls the mezuzah from a door? That happens. These are the kinds of incidents we see. Is that anti-Israel? Well, it probably is. It probably is because somebody is motivated by anti-Israel animus or anger about the war. But unless there's something written or said, we have no way to tie it. So probably that number is even higher than 58%. These are only those that we can verifiably say are connected to Israel.
You mentioned 2013 as some kind of a tipping point. Do you have any sense of why that would be? Why that began this downhill movement? Could it possibly be distance from the Holocaust in terms of years, or new educational trends that began to take hold at that point?
So I'll say two things about it. First of all, we are not just talking about anti-Semitism. If you look at the FBI hate crimes data, you will see a marked rise in racism, a marked rise in Islamophobia, in attacks against the LGBTQ plus community. starting around 2013. This is not just a matter of anti-Semitism. We don't live in a vacuum. Certainly, Jews are a very small percentage of the population and suffer disproportionately in terms of social prejudice, far out of proportion to their numbers. So I'm not talking about that, but there's definitely been a rise in hate. So that's important to note, and it's therefore a societal phenomenon that goes beyond the factors like you mentioned, distance from the Holocaust. That would be particular to anti-Semitism, but it's beyond that. Um, I, I would say that we should look to probably the biggest cause of the rise in anti-Semitism, and that's social media, and now by extension, artificial intelligence, but technology that has helped proliferate social prejudice, has helped proliferate anti-Semitism. Why 2013? I think because it was when social media was really coming into its own. I mean, if you want to date the beginning of social media to Facebook, there were precursors, but if you want to date the beginning to Facebook, you're talking about 2004. But in those years, you couldn't use Facebook unless you were a college student. It was the first few years, it was only available to college students. So you're talking about 2006, 2007, it began being available for adults. Or those beyond college. And it took a few years to take off. It wasn't until 2010, 2011 that you began seeing it used widely. I would say that the 2012 election, the second Obama election, which for some was very very important, and they celebrated it, they welcomed it, and others were not so happy. We began to see this new medium used extensively for what we now call disinformation and misinformation and the proliferation of that. And I think that people learned a lot of lessons in 2012, which we live with today, which is how they could use social media to influence people and put out all kinds of false information that will help people to vote a certain way or encourage people to vote a certain way. And that continued in all sorts of realms, not just with the election. And I think that the rise in hate was really concurrent with that.
We could probably do a whole episode just devoted to social media.
There's a lot more that I could say on social media. That was just the barest amount.
Yeah. Now, does the ADL have a dedicated social media or online unit? And is there any way to measure the level of hate being spread online? Is there some algorithm that could possibly measure the temperature of the internet?
Yeah, so we certainly do. We have something called the Center for Technology and Society. Center for Technology and Society has been working since, I believe, 2017 to fight hate in digital spaces. Most of the people who work there have come from that world and want to give back in some way. They're disgusted by the hate that they see online, and they have relationships at the top levels. They provide technological solutions. And together with the Center on Extremism and the Center for Anti-Semitism Research, have done a huge amount of research on what we're seeing online. They put out report cards on different social media companies and how well they're responding to hate. We now see multiple reports on AI and the effects of artificial intelligence on the proliferation of hate, or how well these artificial intelligence are handling different requests related to related to anti-Semitism or related to hate or extremism or whatever it happens to be. We've put out many reports, and I know there's one coming on the different platforms. But we put out one very recently on this new technology that allows you to um, uh, create videos and all sorts of content. So people can check it out, the Center for Technology and Society on our website, and you'll see lots of examples of this. But it's really cutting edge stuff. And we are definitely we've always been at the vanguard, and we continue to be.
Yes, fascinating, and certainly something to keep an eye on. The How do you see the climate on college campuses? The 2024 report found an 84% increase in anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses from 2023. Have you seen any change or trends on college campuses since the sort of explosion post October 7th?
Yeah, I mean, you really can't compare this moment to what existed post October 7th. That was a horrific time. There was a lot coming at students. There was a lot coming at faculty, staff, administrators. I think many of them were simply not prepared or not prepared to act because the sort of rules that were being invoked, they were not used to enforcing them. And we saw this all play out from October, at least through the end of the school year. We saw the whole encampment issue. That changed dramatically. In the summer of 2024, we saw many campuses put in place rules that they did not have before. And as soon as the school year started, we saw enforcement of those rules in a way that we hadn't seen. We had a whole school year with 2024-25, and we saw many, many fewer incidents, although campus now has more incidents than, or the rise in campus incidents is the highest rise that we've seen across the nation in terms of venue. Approximately a fifth of all incidents now take place on campus, and at least the ones that we track in our audit for the 2024 audit, and that was never the case. So there are incidents taking place, but what I can report is that universities are responding to them in ways that they certainly didn't immediately after 10/7. I know this firsthand. I work closely with the universities in New York and New Jersey, especially the report card schools. So, ADL has a report card that we've put out on 130 schools across the nation. Many of those with high Jewish populations, and I work very closely with those schools. And incidents happen. Students do all sorts of things. Unfortunately, that's out there. But at this point, our concern, well, we're certainly concerned about the incidents, but we're also deeply concerned about the university response, and that's what we look for. Um, so it's a different situation. It's not like what it was like, but we are in a new reality of many, many more incidents on campus than existed before 10/7.
What kind of educational initiatives has the ADL undertaken in both the higher education sphere and K through 12? Because after all, these people are the future, and will lead the way going forward.
Yeah, I mean, education is certainly the a very important way to deal with hate, to deal with anti-Semitism. You're talking about changing hearts and minds, and if you can change hearts and minds, you're going to create a better future. These kinds of programs that we do are about the most proactive. A lot of what I've been talking about is very reactive or measuring the situation so people have the data, but it's not about being proactive. Education is really proactive, and to the extent that you can change hearts and minds, it really matters. I'll point to a few things. First of all, Holocaust education. ADL has partnered with Yad Vashem and the Shoah Foundation, that's Steven Spielberg's foundation, to create, this was many years ago in 2005, to create Echoes and Reflections. Echoes and Reflections has become an enormous way to train educators across the nation in teaching about the Holocaust. More than 125,000 educators have been trained by ADL and continue to be because they receive all sorts of continuing information, invitation to webinars, all kinds of ways to continue to evolve their skills. So that is one important way, and we work throughout the United States. Obviously, 125,000 educators. It's many educators of all backgrounds. Secondly, I would point to our No Place for Hate program. No Place for Hate is really more than just an education program. It's a movement, and people can check it out at noplaceforhate.org. No Place for Hate is essentially a movement where we encourage a club to be created within schools, which galvanizes students and parents and teachers and administrators to engage in anti-hate activities. They're really run by the students. Students decide which activities they want to do. We have an activity bank of hundreds of programs that they can choose from. And the schools need to, it's an accreditation program. The schools need to complete at least 3 of those programs over the course of the year, and many of them are school-wide, in order to be accredited as a No Place for Hate school. We do this in thousands of schools across the nation, affecting hundreds of thousands, really millions actually, of students a year. In this region, we work in about 350 schools, so it's quite a large number of schools. And if we focus on Long Island, I know that's where you are. Long Island happens to have many schools. I think it's something like 80 or so schools involved in the No Place for Hate program. So very important way for us to get these values across, and for schools to focus on the idea that in addition to reading, writing, math, etc., that creating an environment where students respect one another, where they respect the identity of the other, is a critical part of what they need to be doing.
For those who want to dig deeper, the ADL website has a number of has a lot of information, additional information, and I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of Disrupting Hate on hmTv. Many thanks to my guest, Scott Richman of the ADL, for sharing his insights. This episode was directed by Priscilla Dolan. Be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, take care and be well.